There's this central painful paradox that so many of us discover in long-term relationships. It's the feeling of being intensely lonely, even when you're sharing a bed with the person you've spent your life with.
If that sentence hits home for you, I want you to know you are so far from being alone and feeling this way. It's this quiet truth for millions of couples who've built a whole life together but now find themselves feeling emotionally worlds apart. And this experience, it actually has a name. It's called loneliness in tandem. Today, we're not just going to explore why this happens, but we're going to walk through the gentle, practical steps you can take to find your way back to each other. This isn't about blame, not at all. It's about finding a new path forward, together.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start by really getting a handle on this loneliness paradox. Then, we'll look at why it happens, before we get to the real heart of it all, a clear, actionable plan to rebuild that connection. Think of it as a journey from just understanding the problem to actually doing something about it.
All right, let's dive right in. Section 1, the loneliness paradox. What does it really mean? And what does it feel like to be alone together?
It's that strange, kind of hollow feeling, isn't it? You're in the same room, maybe watching the same show, but your inner worlds are just completely separate. Now, this is not a sign that your relationship has failed or that the love is gone. It's a really common thing that can creep in quietly over the decades, especially after the big jobs of life like raising kids or building careers are done. The most important thing to get is that this isn't some personal failure. It's simply a relational pattern. And the best part? It's a pattern that can be changed.
Which leads us perfectly to our second section. So why do we drift apart? To fix this, we've got to understand the big forces at play, especially after we hit our 60s. It really all comes down to a huge shift in the very structure of your life together.
This is so fascinating. For decades, a relationship runs on what you might call task-based intimacy. You are a team with a mission, right? Manage the careers, pay the mortgage, raise the kids. But what happens when the kids are gone and you're both retired? Well, those shared tasks, they vanish, and that can expose a communication gap that was maybe always there, just hidden by the busyness. The need for connection is still there, it just changes. The new mission is something called reciprocal emotional intimacy. This is all about intentionally validating each other's feelings, sharing your vulnerabilities, and actively making new memories together.
Now, when that shift doesn't happen, you can fall into a state of parallel living. It's the direct result of that communication gap. You're like two trains on parallel tracks, going in the same direction, side by side, but never really making contact.
And I bet some of this is going to sound really familiar. Maybe one of you is in the living room and the other's in the bedroom, watching different things. Or maybe you're in the same room, but each of you has headphones on, lost in your own little world. And think about your conversations. Are they all about logistics? Did you get the mail? What's for dinner? These are the subtle, everyday signs of parallel living.
And here's why this is so crucial. This isn't just about feeling a bit distant. This emotional gap has real consequences. As we get older, life throws new challenges our way. Health issues, losing loved ones. Your partner is meant to be your #1 support system through all that. But when you're living parallel lives, that support system gets weak, leaving you both feeling more alone, right when you need each other the most. So closing this gap isn't a luxury. It's absolutely essential for your health and happiness.
Okay, so we get the problem, we know what's causing it. The good news, and it is really good news, is that there's a clear path forward. So let's jump into Section 3 and look at the solution, the 2 pillars of intimacy. This is your foundation for finding your way back.
I really want you to let this idea sink in because it changes everything. Loneliness is not a life sentence you just have to endure. It is a practical, solvable problem, a communication deficit. That simple shift in perspective puts you back in the driver's seat. You're not just putting up with a feeling anymore. You're actively solving for connection.
And the cure has nothing to do with grand romantic gestures or expensive trips. It's so much simpler and more powerful than that. The cure is just building small, intentional, consistent habits. And we're going to focus on 2 core habits, the 2 pillars that will support your reconnected relationship.
Okay, pillar number 1 is the 10-minute emotional check-in. It's simple. Every single day, you set aside 10 minutes. No phones, no TV, no distractions. The goal is not to solve problems. It's just to share a little piece of your inner world and to listen to your partner share theirs. You could ask, what was one thing that made you smile today? It's like making a small, daily deposit into your relationship's emotional bank account. And pillar number 2 is the Shared Novelty Investment. This is all about doing one new, shared activity every single week. The key word there is novelty. It can't be just dinner at the same old place. It's got to be something that creates fresh memories and gives you something new to talk about. Maybe it's checking out a museum, taking a walk in a different park, or even just trying a new recipe together. This actively fights against that parallel living by building a brand new collection of shared experiences.
So we have the why and the what. Now we need the how. Section 4 is your gentle, practical toolkit with 4 concrete steps you can take to start building these pillars. You know, it's one thing to know the theory, but how do you actually get started, especially if you haven't talked like this in years? The key is to start small, be gentle, and create a real sense of safety for both of you.
So here are the 4 steps that are going to be your on-ramp. We've got the no-fix rule, scheduling a weekly novelty date, practicing what we'll call low-risk vulnerability, and auditing your home environment. Let's break down the most important ones.
Okay, this first step is probably the most important one of all. During your 10-minute check-in, you have to have a strict no-fix rule. When your partner shares a frustration, your job is not to offer advice or tell them what to do. Your only job is to listen and validate their feelings. Simple phrases like, "Wow, that sounds really frustrating," or "I get why you'd feel that way," are absolute gold. This creates emotional safety. It tells your partner this is a space where they can be heard, not managed.
And step 3 is all about how you use that safe space you've created. If you haven't been vulnerable in a while, you can't just dive into the deep end. Think of it like going to the gym. You wouldn't try to lift the heaviest weight on day 1, right? You start small. Share a minor, non-threatening feeling from your day. "I felt a little anxious in traffic today," or "I was really touched by that phone call with our grandson." These small shares slowly rebuild that muscle of emotional intimacy, making it feel safer and more natural to share bigger things down the road.
I know this can all sound a bit daunting, so it's really important to get some perspective. Let's go to section 5 and talk about wisdom for the long game. Because that thing that might feel like a weakness, all those years together, is actually your greatest strength.
Just think about what you have that a brand new couple doesn't. You have decades of shared history, a whole secret language of inside jokes and memories. You have a deep-rooted stability and a foundation of trust that's been built over a lifetime. You're not starting from scratch here, you're renovating a beautiful, historic home with a solid foundation.
And here is the most reassuring part of this whole journey. You don't need a relationship earthquake. You don't need some big, dramatic Hollywood transformation. All you need are small, consistent adjustments. A tiny course correction made every day with that check-in, and every week with that new activity, will lead you to a profoundly different and better place over time. It's the cumulative power of all those small, intentional acts of connection.
And that brings us to our final section, your first gentle challenge. We've talked about the what, the why, and the how. Now it's time to put it all together into one simple, immediate action you can take, maybe even tonight.
If you only remember one thing from our time together today, please let it be this. Intimacy requires intentionality. It doesn't just happen on its own, especially not after the task-based part of life is over. It has to be chosen, prioritized, and practiced. That lonely feeling is a communication deficit, and being intentional is the cure. So here it is, your first action, your gentle challenge for today. Before you move on to the next thing, take a moment to decide on a specific, recurring 10-minute time slot for your emotional check-in. Don't just say, "Oh, we'll do it later." Pull out your calendar. Is it going to be at 8 a.m. with coffee? 9 p.m. when the house is quiet? Agree on it and put it in the schedule. Make an actual appointment with your relationship. This one small, concrete step is the most powerful first move you can make on the path back to each other. As we close, let's just remember that feeling lonely inside a marriage isn't a sign of failure. It's a solvable problem, and it's rooted in a communication gap that can happen to anyone after a lifetime of change. It's a natural shift, but one that just needs a conscious, intentional response from us. The path back to each other isn't built on grand gestures. It's built on 2 simple, powerful pillars. That structured daily 10-minute check-in to create emotional safety, and that weekly investment in trying something new together to create fresh energy and memories. These are just practical tools for rebuilding closeness.
Your shared history is your greatest strength. And with just a little bit of consistent, intentional effort, the relationship you've built over a lifetime doesn't have to be a source of loneliness. It can, and it absolutely should, remain your most vital source of security, your strongest support, and your deepest joy for all the years still to come.